Welcome, everyone.
Hey, everybody. Welcome to the What Kind of Internet Do You Want podcast. I'm Amy James.
I am Devon James.
And today we have so much news to cover. It's a little bit crazy. It was a huge week for crypto. The leading story, of course, is that Ripple has won at least this stage of the fight with the SEC. Do you want to give us an overview of it, or does the robot have an overview, or what's up?
Robot does, yeah. Let's see what the robot has to say.
In this week's biggest news, on Thursday, a court ruled Ripple Labs Inc. did not violate federal securities law by selling its XRP token on public exchanges, and later, in the same day, the Screen Actors Guild announced that they'd be striking alongside the Writers Guild for the first time in 6 decades and grinding Hollywood to a halt.
Yes.
Very big deal. Very big deal. Yeah. So, I mean, it's interesting because it was kind of like a mixed decision. They basically said the explicit pre-sale at the beginning where you were selling to investors without using any of the exemptions, that's illegal. That was an illegal sale of securities. But all the sales on exchanges and the programmatic sales were not. So that's a really big deal. Obviously, it was one of the earliest ones. And so they... like some of the others at the same time, weren't really making any attempt to follow rules because they just felt like, oh, they obviously don't apply to us. These aren't stocks. Where since then, some sales, especially when they do their pre-sale to investors, they try to use like the Reg D exemption and stuff like that. So it'll be interesting to see how it applies to those. If they look at that and they say, okay, so the Filecoin one is okay because they did sell using the Reg D exemption. But I think the most significant impact is just that it means they can put tokens like XRP back on American exchanges. In fact, Coinbase right away put XRP back on their exchange. It's fantastic.
Might be the most significant short-term impact, but I think long-term it potentially has the ability to do much more. It's just really fantastic signaling for the future of the crypto industry, being able to stay in the US and have a supportive regulatory environment. So, thrilled to see it. And it's kind of funny that this story got bundled with the Screen Actors Guild story, which obviously is the other big, huge story this week. They don't seem on their face like they have anything to do with one another, but I think that they both have a tremendous amount to do with Web3 because there's this sort of there's all of these pent up problems, and Web3 functionality holds a lot of the solutions, and there's just not yet very much awareness of that. So the Ripple ruling says like, okay, yes, entrepreneurs and innovators are going to be able to build these solutions here in the US where the tech sector already is and build upon them and all of that. And the Screen Actors Guild strike means that things will be rejiggered in terms of the business model of the entertainment industry in a really profound way. This hasn't happened in 60 years where both the Writers Guild and the Screen Actors Guild were on strike at the same time. And right at the same time that AI is, becoming a thing, like it's just, there's just so much collision happening here. And so it could be exciting. It's made me wonder. So when I was, graduating into working in the entertainment industry was when the last writer's strike happened. And there was this exemption that was made for new media at the time. Do you remember it? We sort of leveraged it to help people get into the union.
It was a way to get into SAG. I forgot about that. Yeah.
Right. Yeah. And it was this weird sort of hack, but it was helpful to both sides. It let people participate in new media projects that wouldn't have otherwise been able to. And it gave new media projects or new media people a path into the union if they wanted to. And so it was just like this win-win. Would there be an opportunity for Web3 to get involved here? Do you think that, somehow this will lead to people using P2P distribution?
I think so.
Atomic kind of, media and contracts to distribute it? Interesting.
No, I think so. It's interesting. I think they pick kind of the worst time to go on strike. It's like they go on strike because they're not happy with I mean, obviously, it's a handful of different things, but oftentimes it's got a lot to do with wages. And it happened in 2000, or the Writers Guild went on strike in 2008, and the Screen Actors Guild considered it, and they didn't at the last minute. But it was because incomes were down, and that was because of DVD sales being down because of the beginning of streaming and stuff like that. And it just feels like the wrong way to
Right. The term
react to
content
that.
creator was not a thing.
Exactly.
At that time.
And it is now.
And they
And
called
it
it
is
new
now.
media. But
This
media is
is-
such an old school word now.
I think this is the time of YouTubers to kind of take the lead, you know, and especially now that there's all these tools like you're pointing out for AI content creation. There are no guilds that control the writing or creation of YouTube. It's pretty much unscripted content, whether it's scripted or not, kind of thing. And like, well, look, for the context, the last time this happened, the way that producers and networks responded is they invented reality TV, unscripted TV, and it never went away because it has a niche, but it's really inexpensive and it's really profitable as a result of that. It gets a very large audience, and it basically just taps into exactly why YouTube is popular and why online streaming content is popular. Sometimes it's a little view of someone's life, you know, it's a little bit more real, you know, cinema verite kind of a thing sometimes. But there's no guilds involved, et cetera. And so there's no rules about who can be producing stuff. And so now that there's going to be this dearth of content coming out of the studios for an unknown period of time, like they all had to stop production right away.
I know.
So this could certainly be an opportunity for independent content creators to kind of step up, and especially as we're seeing experiments with Web3 distribution, tying it into tokens and using token unlocks and all this other stuff, and attaching something to an NFT, et cetera. I definitely think we're going to see, especially because we had that article, was it last week or the week before, where there's an animated film funded and controlled by a DAO. You start putting all those pieces together, and without the competition of Hollywood TV and movies, it's a big opportunity.
So do you happen to know if people that are members of these unions, if they are able to participate in something like a YouTube show?
I think so. Yeah, you can participate in anything that isn't union. So so basically the trick is, like, you want to produce a show as a union show, because if you've got it means you tend to have the best quality people. You've got union crew, union writers, union actors, and it's because they all have agreements with each other that the union actors will only work with union producers and will only work with union directors. And
Sure.
So with a YouTube show, there's no union involved at all. So it means whatever encumbrance someone has, they can likely work with it because it's a non-union gig. They might still be considered scabs, though. So it might still be, a bad move, but that would be really interesting if you start seeing, like, really high-end actors start showing up in YouTube shows.
Right? That'd be
Ooh, that would be
crazy.
interesting. That would be
so
very
crazy.
interesting. But I don't think they're inclined to. They don't want to lift up their biggest competition, to be honest. So I don't know. We'll see about that. Anyway, we've got a lot of news to cover. So why don't we dive right into the next one? Yeah.
Yeah, for sure.
In
All right.
Web3 news, a Bitcoin tipping application found a way around Apple's draconian App Store rules, and Google
love this story.
formalized their App Store's terms of service for using tokens in apps. Meta's Threads has gotten to 100 million users. Snoop Dogg invested in a Web3 music platform, and a major NFT experiment by Rick and Morty creator Dan Harmon will be released in September.
This one's cool too.
Yeah.
Yeah. All right. Well, first things first, Zapple Pay. So freaking cool.
You want to explain what happened?
Sure. So an app was allowing tipping,
Crypto tipping.
an app, that was on the Apple App Store was allowing crypto tipping, which meant that Apple wasn't getting its 30% cut because the tipping was happening inside the app. It wasn't happening through the App Store's payment channels, which was the sort of option offered to them to rectify the problem. The developer of the app conceded and removed the app's ability to send these tips. And less than 2 weeks later, a group of, or I think just a couple of independent developers created their own version that has this workaround, but has this ingenious aspect of it that allows you to send the tips by using an emoji. So I use the emoji the sun from our work with Open Index Protocol, right? Like sunshine is the best disinfectant. Let's have some transparency, all of that kind of stuff.
So you would just need to put a sun emoji on as a comment on someone's whatever, and that would
send
lead
them.
to a
And I'm
tip
guessing
being
there's
sent.
I set whatever the amount is, I'm guessing.
Yeah.
I didn't look that deep into it, but it's so fun.
It's smart. It's
so
smart.
smart.
It's smart because so I like the way Apple implements their thing in the sense that by being on the App Store, you have the access to their payment system, which means every app doesn't need to come up with their own Stripe contract and integrate that all in. It's just built right in. You can and someone doesn't have to re-enter their debit card information or anything like that. It just uses whatever you've got on file with Apple. So as an option, it's a fantastic one. It's very convenient on both sides. That Apple forces it has always been dumb, to be honest. They really shouldn't. They've deplatformed things. It's very
so
Apple.
Weird. It is very Apple, but it's also not in terms of like the image that they put out there, right? They put out this like happy, friendly, pro creativity image. That's kind of what they're known for. Think different. And then they're like, except we get a cut.
Yeah, exactly. But so the way that they did this is brilliant because it's basically not. It's not something that is tied to or controlled by the developer of the application itself. It's kind of a layer on top of it, because within the app itself, all that's happening is the sending of an emoji, like you pointed out. And so they actually talked about if Apple does decide that they're going to push back and force their hand on this, we're just going to release it on top of every social network also, so that
This is my favorite part.
So that you can use an emoji to send a crypto tip on Twitter or Facebook.
Wouldn't that be amazing?
And then is Apple going to delist Twitter? Hopefully, as a result of this, Apple kind of recognizes that this is very much outside of their control. They can control the traditional payment rails that happen through their own thing, but they need to be open to the fact that cryptocurrency is just software and it can run on top of things, and they can't have control of absolutely everything. I mean, it's weird. It's like you were saying, it's un-Apple, but it's kind of become Apple because, like, yes, they want to have this freewheeling image and think different and everything, but it's, Steve Jobs left this legacy of everything is so meticulously precise. Like he would spend days preparing, practicing his keynotes and stuff like that. And there's, horror stories about it. But it means they don't release something until it's perfect, and they don't mess around at the edges, and they don't if you're not ready to go on with a perfect presentation, you don't go on, kind of thing. And so it's very much like
I like
they want to
that
have control. I know, me too. But crypto is anarchy to some degree, at least as far as they're seeing it. So they don't want to allow anarchy.
For sure. I mean, we're still in the Wild West. It feels like it's sad. I don't like to say that we are. It's lawless, the Wild West.
It is not, my goodness. I'm so over that meme. We're not in the Wild. It would be great if we were in the Wild West, because it means if someone stole from you, you could shoot him in the middle of the street.
Hey, I can't believe we're talking about
and you cannot do that. So we are certainly not in the Wild West. Anyway, let's take a look at this second one.
Well, speaking of the App Store is more of the Wild West in terms of that it's always been more open than Apple. Quite a contrast there. Mm-hmm. But
so open that it's for some time period, a lot of people had the perception that they just didn't have any controls whatsoever, and that, like, if you're tired of Apple having control, you just go to the Wild West of Google. Well, that's not the case.
No,
on their own App Store, they do have some rules, and at least finally they have outlined what those rules are to allow crypto-based apps into the App Store.
Mm-hmm. Yep. So Google is spelling out rules for blockchain-based apps on Android. And I don't think we'll get into the details of the terms of service here, but it's just great to see that there are details of a terms of service, so that if you want to be on their App Store, you have, an idea of where you should be designing your work to comply.
Yep.
And so that everybody's happy there.
Yep. And I guess we're just going to round off the fangs. Next one is back to Facebook Meta. We talked about last week. that Threads was well on its way to being the fastest app to 100 million users. We actually had a comment on social media saying we were dreaming that there's no way they're going to actually get there because of various legal challenges that they're facing. But it looks like they actually hit it in, I think, 5 days.
In record time, probably.
Certainly record time, yeah.
It's just not a surprise to me when all you had to do was hit a single button on Instagram. And so it's just like, okay, well, however many users Instagram has, Threads is going to have
3 billion.
Oh, wow.
Exactly. Instagram has 3 billion users. So the fact that they got 100 million, like, it sounds impressive, but what is it, 3%? Like, you know, honestly, they didn't get the greatest conversion rate there. So, I mean, you know, inside of 5 days, hitting 100 million users ain't bad. So
also,
can't fault them, but...
In the comments, raise your hand if you opened your Thread app this week. Thread, you know, like after you hit that button. Have you looked at it since?
Exactly. Let's see. Did the bot talk about the Web3 music?
Yeah, Snoop Dogg's
so
up
we're doing
next.
that one too. Okay, let's see. Yeah. Okay. So, you know, we've had our mind on music distribution in the Web3 space for a few years now. So,
yeah, like 10.
So this one's interesting. We were reading this before, and it's tough because it's kind of like what's their business model exactly? Like they're talking about very confusing things within the article. One, they're saying 100% goes to the artist. That sounds great. That sounds absolutely fantastic. It really does. I love it. How exactly is sound going to be sustainable if they're not taking a cut at all? Like, why invest $20 million into an app that doesn't have the ability to capture any value? So it's got to be capturing value somewhere, I would hope. I'm not trying to say we should take away money from artists. I'm saying some portion of it needs to go to who's helping discovery happen. Otherwise, there's no incentive to build good discovery apps. Like sound, for example, or we ultimately want Spotify and Apple Music to compete within this same space, and they're obviously asking for enormous chunks. So we think there needs to be some sort of room for some sort of a cut involved. But then there's the other question of like, how are they actually pricing it? Like this kind of says like they're basing it on the idea of Radiohead's pay what you want approach, which worked out well for Radiohead. It did because it was the first experiment, and they were Radiohead. Exactly.
Like, they were already Radiohead at that point. And Rainbows was not their first album by a long shot. Exactly.
So you can't assume that applying that same model across the whole industry is going to work out well. I'm down to see more experimentation in the space, though. So you know.
One thing to me that stood out is that the co-founder of Sound, which is this platform that we're talking about that just received investment from Snoop Dogg and A16Z, is that he was a former product manager at Pandora. So I just think that that's like signaling that people that have been working at elite Web2 distribution platforms are now working and succeeding on getting support to experiment with Web3 music platforms. And the experiments are they're a necessary step. It's kind of painful to watch the attempts and failures, and it's certainly painful to participate in them. But it's an important aspect. You know, you don't get that lightning in a bottle moment until all of the pieces kind of have come together and you have all of the steps that you need in terms of the tech stack. You have all of the education that you need in terms of the community. You have the exact kind of right content involved, you know? And so I agree. There's some red flags in terms of how it works, why it will work, I guess.
How the monetization works, exactly, yeah.
But hey, let's see what happens.
But
they can always pivot.
One thing I noticed about it that was interesting is that, again, everyone's trying to figure out how to use NFTs right when it comes to media. And in that case, it was like sell an artist's entire catalog as an NFT collection, and then it can go up in value. It's an interesting approach. I'm still not sure that that's the way to do it. I do like, let's bring up this next
to me, that's
one.
like too much of the older kind of Fat Protocols model of thinking where,
Right.
It's not like ongoing revenue streams in the way that we've become accustomed to and that seem to work better.
Yeah. Where this one, I wonder if it might be. I don't know. I don't know if this can do ongoing revenue streams, but this, This should be a funny segment to actually even say read any of the article. But so Rick and Morty creator Dan Harmon is working on a new TV show for Fox's animation domination or whatever it's called Crapopolis. And the Web3 angle to it is that they sold an NFT a year ago or so that is actually going to be used for kind of making decisions about the show going forward, so that the people that own the NFT. And this is actually a good idea for, like, if you don't know Dan Harmon, made Rick and Morty. Rick and Morty, it's a weird show. It's kind of like Simpsons was 25, 30 years ago kind of thing. It's everyone that there's an inside joke that like, oh, you're just not smart enough to understand Rick and Morty. It's the smartest show ever made kind of thing. It's also some incredibly dumb, fart and poop jokes kind of thing. Like that's half the show. So it's hyper cringy in some ways, and then also like just incredibly meta, brilliant kind of writing kind of stuff in other ways. So it has a very, very obsessive fandom, which lends itself well to this idea where you get people to buy these NFT tokens, and then you actually can do kind of on-chain voting. I don't know if they didn't say actually if they're going to be doing on-chain voting, but they're going to use the fact that you hold a token to be able to provide your input. And it seems to me that with an audience like that, that's exactly who you want to sell those to, because they want to share their ideas. And now you're giving them a method to do so.
I completely agree. So it says a non-fungible token allows holders to vote on show components, see exclusive token-gated content, participate in gamified experiences like scavenger hunts, access a Discord channel, and attend in-person events with the cast. And I completely agree. This is that kind of niche, cultish type of community that you need in order for something like this, especially at this stage, to work really well, but also to have that community participation around an NFT. I think it's the right use case for an NFT for sure.
Now, do you remember what the name of the NFT that they sold was?
I do not.
It's called the Crapopolis Crap Chicken.
Well, that's lovely.
Yeah, and it's very Dan Harmon. It's very, very Dan Harmon. And you got to wonder because as much as we're selling this up as like what a great idea, it's not exactly financially doing that well. Like when they did the sale itself in late 22, which is probably it's because of crypto winter, it only raised $1 million or actually no, it raised a lot less than that, and then it. Let me see. It made it up to about $1 million in secondary sales, but it's down since then. It's down from its actual release price, and currently each token, the floor is about $150. So for $150, you can buy one of these things and have a little bit of an input into this. The show hasn't gone live yet.
Price to me.
That's a good point. That's a good point. And I mean, the show hasn't gone live yet, so most people that might be interested in it wouldn't even have known about it yet.
True.
And because it's a second market thing, it's tradable on OpenSea. It just means once someone's kind of over it and ready to let it go, they can sell theirs and let someone else who wants it a little bit more come along and get it, which might turn into ongoing value or revenue if the show creators themselves are holding some of those NFTs and they can kind of sell a little bit of it at a time kind of thing.
Yeah,
that can be another revenue stream.
That links back to our first story about the strike is that some NFTs have this component where they require that the original creator gets a cut of every sale forever. And so you could think about that like a residual where okay, it's fine that these tokens have a second market, have a second life. You can trade them, like, I don't know, like
this
trading
is almost
cards or
certain
something.
the case for this. Yeah, absolutely.
Right?
Yeah.
And yet, when that happens, the creator would get a cut. And that actually, especially in something like this, makes a lot of sense where they kind of need that ongoing revenue to justify or maybe just because it feels familiar in the way that residuals worked.
Well, and it goes right back to the point we were making about the music platform. Like, if they're getting a cut of the NFT second market sales, then that could justify why they can give away the music streaming itself for free. So again, it's all just experimentation within this kind of this sector. Got it. Absolutely love it. Absolutely love it. Anyway, we got something up next. Let's move to our bot again.
Elon Musk announced he is building a ChatGPT competitor. Lightning Labs' new developer tools enables AI to use Bitcoin and the Web3 company Space and time-integrated ChatGPT for database querying.
Space and time? Still can't quite get the inflection right.
All right. Well, first is I think Elon is calling it Truth GPT, which just cracks me up because didn't Trump call his platform something about truth? Truth Social.
I don't know if he named it that or if it already. I don't remember, but yeah, that's pretty funny. Yeah.
Hilarious.
Yeah.
First of all, also really. I don't know what the exact right word is here. It's like of the time. It's very on the zeitgeist, you know? It's like...
You can't blame Musk for that. Of course he knows. Yeah.
Right?
Yeah, very much so. Yep.
Everywhere I go, I'm hearing people talk about we can't know what's true online anymore.
Mm-hmm.
And, you know, as you guys know, we made a deep fake years ago to prove the point that at some point in the very near future, we would feel that way. We would feel like we can't know what we're going to trust online anymore. And how do we have the solution for that? Obviously, the answer is public key cryptography and signing everything.
Yeah.
But the truth aspect just kind of cracks me up because hopefully, I guess, all of these systems are programmed by humans and therefore they have the bias, if you want to call it that, of the humans that were programming it.
Yes. I mean, just by choosing the data that you're going to train it on, it's going to have whatever biases are part of that that data. Absolutely.
Yeah. So, you know, apparently Musk is the knower of the truth.
Yeah. I mean, I don't know. He says in here that the point, like, I don't even know if this is going to be called Truth GPT. What got announced this week is XAI, just because he's got this whole X, he's named his kid X. He's going to rename Twitter X. And this next company is called XAI. I think Truth GPT was just something he just labeled, you know, his attempt at when he tweeted about it months ago or whatever. But it says that the goal of it is to be maximum truth-seeking AI that tries to understand the nature of the universe.
Which honestly I appreciate.
That's tough. Yeah. Well, I mean, especially if they take an approach of rather than trying to select training data, instead just saying like the whole of the internet or the whole of Twitter is your training data, and thus it's the zeitgeist of human conversation. Now, obviously, that's influenced by whatever bots are being put in there, and you know, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. But it's tough. It's tough. How do you distinguish truth? I don't know.
How do you even know if you have all of Twitter? How do you know that they didn't
Twitter knows,
set aside a portion of it? But how do we know?
We don't. Well, I mean, we do and we don't, in the sense that the API does grant you access to the entire fire hose, they call it, if you want to capture that. And so it'd be possible for someone to be capturing enough of it that they could compare against whatever the training data that would be going into something like that and just know, yeah, this is being left out or this is being left out. I don't know that anyone's going to do that.
Definitely not. Doesn't seem like be way too expensive and annoying.
Right. It doesn't seem like Elon would be inclined, especially because XAI says, you know, we're not part of his other companies, but we're going to work closely with his other companies. So it seems like he would have the incentive to make sure that it's being fed all of Twitter because he wants Twitter to become actually recognized as the public square kind of thing. But yeah, functionally, how do you know those kind of things? I don't know that we necessarily have solutions.
I think he has the reputation as like
right, but we don't want to have to depend on someone's reputation. Exactly.
Yes, exactly. It's just like, yeah, it's great that whoever is in charge, that when somebody you like is in charge, you're like, oh, things are good. But then what happens?
But the best test of the system is handing it over to your enemies.
Yes. And Twitter isn't that today.
No.
So
no.
Yeah. But a step toward getting there could be this next thing from Lightning. Super excited about it.
See.
I love what they called it. So basically the news is that Lightning Labs released a new tool that they are saying can be used for AI Bitcoin integration. And they called it L402, which is a super cute throwback to the 402 error code in the earliest days of the web when they were assigning the error codes. You know how you get a 404 when the content address has moved and there's nothing there now? Well, a 402 was meant to give you an error if payment was required to be accessing something, because they knew, even in those earliest days, that we would need native money on the internet for the incentives to all work properly. So they set this aside, and it's remained just a blank.
It's literally never been used.
Yeah, yeah.
Unfortunately.
So it's cool to see Lightning using
a little
that.
nod to it. That was kind of brilliant. Yeah, this is a necessary step, most certainly.
For sure.
Just because the bots need access to money. Money is a very regulated thing, and a bot can't AML KYC itself. It needs to have instant settlement. So Lightning is an approach to doing so, and it needs to have low costs. So you can't really do it on like Ethereum with the high gas fees and stuff like that. So it's a smart way to do it. It basically just means that just like tapping into any other API, any application built on these AI systems can tap into the ability to spend money. Some doomers especially will worry that that's when you've really taken the chains off. Like now it can rent more server space so that it can grow itself, and then it can buy the military of a country so that it can have drones, et cetera, et cetera.
Okay, but it can also do really cool stuff for you that will make your life so much more simple.
Yes.
And assuming that malice will be built into these things, it's just it's good for the Hollywood movies.
I think we should assume
it's not real life.
No, I think that we should assume that some people will use it for malice, but I think the primary argument we make for why the doomers are wrong, and why AI and Web3 are kind of made for each other, is if you build it, if just 2 or 3 companies have access to it, then yeah, that could definitely be really 100%. Dangerous. If this is just new emergent technology that everyone has access to and that everyone can be running themselves, and by using Web3 tools, they can be running themselves in a way that they can control it and have, it's not just an API, it's literally the code running for themselves kind of thing. Especially if you then give it access to money, it can really be your little digital agent that runs around the internet doing things on your behalf. And it would very much be the counter to the big, dangerous, dystopian point of view, the Terminator dystopian point of view, where if everyone has access to it, even if there's that, small percentage of people that are trying to use it maliciously, everyone else can use it defensively and protect themselves from them and really, improve their own lives. It's like Steve Jobs used to talk about that a computer is the bicycle for a mind. This is like a rocket ship for a mind. Like it's going to level everyone up dramatically. I'm super excited about it. I'm sorry, doomers, but it's going to be okay.
Yeah. Yeah, 100%. And then also just keeping tabs on AI news, there was an announcement that a Web3 database protocol has used ChatGPT for querying their database. So it says...
kind of similar to the story we talked about a couple of weeks ago, where the one chatbot was built on top of some documentation, and then another one was built on top of the entirety of Web3 information, so you can ask things about all the different protocols out there. But this one's different because they didn't feed it how this protocol works, so you can ask questions about how it works from a developer point of view. They tied it into the actual data within its database itself, so it's kind of like an AI search engine running on top of a Web3 data store.
Kind of, but the point is to generate SQL or Python scripts. So it's like using ChatGPT as a way to build things with the database is what it seems like to me. I don't know. Interesting.
Yeah.
I think, we've talked about this before, but the ways in which AI can accelerate Web3 are just like really exciting to see. So yeah, like to keep the tabs on that.
All right. Well, let's see what's up next, Mr. Bot. Hold on. Let me make this loaded. Oh, I love this story. Okay.
The Bitcoin price has held steady this week, hovering around $30,000. You can now store your private keys as colors, and Bank of America received a $150 million fine for deceptive practices.
Ooh. Actually, I take that back. It is. It's actually really close to 30,000 right now. So we'll look at numbers in a minute. But so this is fun. It's fun and it's okay. So the various BIP standards, like BIP 39, the intent of them was to simplify your private key from this string of letters that no one can really remember into something somewhat memorable. So a series of 12 or 24 words, or really just the first 4 letters of those 12 or 24 words. And that works pretty well. You know, you can put it on a piece of paper. Some people could actually literally, they call it brain wallet. They could memorize it. They can put it in their password manager, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. But the point that these guys make is that if a thief is rifling through your house and they find a piece of paper with 12 words on it, it's pretty obvious what it is. It's definitely your private keys. Where you could have a different way of encoding your private keys rather than on 12 words. What was it? 16 colors, I think? 8 colors. Yeah, 12 words to 8 colors, or 24-word phrase to 16 colors. And these aren't just like red, blue, and green kind of thing. These are, basically CMYK colors, a whole palette of colors kind of thing.
Yeah.
So there's enough definition there within the color space that with just a very few number of colors, you could in fact encode an entire private key. And so now if someone were to store this in their safe, you might be able to figure out what it is, right?
It's also sort of obvious at that point.
Not necessarily, because what you could do is you could paint your wall. Well, painting your wall might be a bad idea, but it's because you want it has to be exact, obviously. If it's off by a few degrees or something like that, it's no longer going to work as your private key. But you could put it in a handful of different things. You could put some of it as a pixel in some digital art on your wall. You could put some of it as your background on Twitter. So the point is you could hide it in right out in the open, kind of is the idea, because colors are all around us, and you just need to remember the order in which the painting has the first part of the key, and the background on your television has the second one, and XYZ has the rest. So I'll be honest, I don't see many people using it in the way that they're talking about, but I could definitely see interesting, because like AI can now take those QR codes and make it into an image that doesn't look ugly like a QR code. It looks like,
oh my God,
so imagine
I love those.
Combining that with colors so that you know exactly where within the QR code is the color that you want to use, kind of thing. There could be some really interesting ways to encode private key data with this kind of a spec. I don't know how it'll work out, and maybe it never will, but I think
it's a fun experiment, right? For sure.
Exactly. Anyway, let's look at the next one. Yet again, banks misbehaving. This reminds me of Wells Fargo getting caught basically doing the same thing a few years ago.
Well, not only do we have this ridiculous news in the land of TradFi, but Munib, who runs, what is he calling it now? Trust machines. Stacks, back in the day. One name, or whatever name, like way back in the day. He announced this week that Bank of America closed his personal bank account that he'd had for 15 years. And he thinks that the reason is that he does Coinbase transactions through that account, buying Bitcoin. I mean, it's just staggering, really. These stories kind of back to back like that. It's just like, we've hated on things for a long time now, but this is just like making that public, in a way where we're all kind of able to acknowledge that it's a pain point in our lives.
Yeah.
Because you kind of think it's just me or something, like it's having trouble. No.
Right. No, I mean, it's especially bad because you keep on hearing regulators and lawmakers talk about how, this is a threat to the stability of the banking. The crypto industry is a threat to the stability of the banking system. And it's like, are you serious? Stability of the banking system? Is that a joke? Because no one likes their bank. They're all abusive. They're all constantly getting caught doing really awful, abusive things. This is the second largest bank. Like, you got to wonder, is it literally an intentional part of their revenue stream to be double charging overdraft fees and denying people access to their credit? Like, is that why they're the second largest bank, or is it just that they're too big to fail, but they're also too big?
They're inept.
Exactly. To actually be effective at their jobs. It's kind of absurd. And you got to wonder, how much money did they make by doing this? Like they had to pay. It's kind of absurd. They had to give more money to the regulator for the fee than back to the customers that they ripped off. They gave $80 million back to customers for unfairly charging bogus fees. And they had previously given $23 million back to customers for being improperly denied their card awards. So like they're told you're going to get, 2% cash back, and then they just weren't getting the 2% cash back kind of thing. But then there's $150 million that went to the CFPP for catching them.
Where's that money coming from?
Right, exactly. And is it going to make them increase fees? You gotta. I don't really know. I'd like to know how much money they actually made through this little scam, and did it all get put back out into the customers, or if they made 500 million, then they can just keep on arbitraging this of being like, well, we make 500 million, we have to pay 100 million to the customers and 150 million in fees. We still made a 50% margin. Exactly. Yeah. I don't know. But it will continue to undermine trust in these institutions. And especially if they're going to try to push that, like, the central bank digital currencies is the thing you should use because, it's the speed of crypto, but it's the assurance that you have from the banking institution. I don't know if that's going to work out very well. I don't think there's that many people that actually consider the banking institution to be a trustworthy thing that they should actually kind of trust or put their money behind or anything else like that. So I don't know. But on all this news with the XRP thing and everything else, the bot told us that this is daily. Sorry, I want to look at weekly here.
Okay.
Yeah, exactly. Generally still doing good. We want to do blues here. Tickers. There we go. Now we see it. Yeah. I mean,
the market's definitely up since
surprising.
we were looking at it last week. Filecoin was up when we looked at it this morning.
I think a lot of these are up about
correction.
The amount that the whole kind of industry is, and then they're kind of balancing themselves off from that kind of thing. So
yeah, typical.
Most of them are in the range. Wow, Theta's up 10%. Storage is down 15%. Oof.
Interesting how Bitcoin's kind of held steady despite the bad news earlier, and now this good news. We're just kind of holding steady.
Well, it almost hit 32, if I remember right, but it was definitely above 31. And so I laughed when it said that it's holding steady at 30, but you can see right there, it's at 30, right below me. 30,100. So almost nothing. Ethereum peaked above 2,000 last night. So there was just a lot of exuberance in the overall market, which is, great.
Understandable.
News.
Yeah, absolutely.
Exactly. Yeah. All right. Last set of articles, I do believe.
Regulatory news.
Oh, good times. Excellent. Okay.
An updated version of the Responsible Financial Innovation Act, introduced by Senators Lummis and Gillibrand, dominated the policy news early this week, while in the House work continues on the digital asset and market structure and stablecoin bills.
Cool.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, we're excited that regulation is continuing to move forward. I think I actually wrote about this a little bit this week. And, I think what's just kind of interesting is that the EU is further along with their regulation than we are, which is the opposite of Web3. So that's
Web 2.
I mean, Web 2.
Or Web 1, really?
Web 1.
Yeah.
I meant Web 1. Opposite of Web 1. That's why we have Web 2 here in the US. Things grew well because we had a positive regulatory environment, especially in comparison to the EU, where they had a lot more restriction. And now that they even have a regulatory environment is better. Like that it just exists. Even if it is overly restrictive, the threat, of what Ripple has been going through, the amount of time that it takes, the amount of resources that it takes, just all that it takes away from your work of building the project is a major threat to your work.
Yep.
It's a major drain. It's obviously not something that most builders would want to engage in. And so, anyway, it would be amazing if the legislature is able to move forward with regulation in the shorter term. The outlook on that is meh.
Yeah. I mean, obviously divided Congress. In the Senate explicitly it's 50-50, and they've been able to get no one to cross the aisle on these things so far. So we shall see. One thing this is getting some positive feedback from the crypto industry, some negative. Some people are saying, "Oh my God, it really clamps down on kind of surveillance and stuff like that." But it does so specifically on exchanges, and it requires a lot. It requires a lot of rules for exchanges. It's honestly probably a good thing in the wake of FTX. But then also, one of the changes from the previous version of the bill is that they are defining DeFi with some somewhat strict rules. And some people might react to that and say, "Oh, get your hands off my decentralized whatever." But what did we learn last year with the handful of projects that called themselves DeFi and were very much, and the meme was just, this isn't DeFi, this is CeFi that's just lying about itself. And that's a good thing. If in order to fall into certain regulatory protections or something that a decentralized finance protocol would have access to, it needs to meet certain requirements that it actually is decentralized. And if it turns out to be more of a centralized business effort, it doesn't get those same protections or whatever else. That would definitely be a good thing, in my opinion, because it would differentiate in the consumer's mind between those two things, and you could start really seeing clear the ones that are rug pulls and run off with your money are centralized, and the ones that keep on chugging no matter what happens are decentralized, and the public can start to really understand what the benefit of decentralization on this front really is. So I'm excited about it. I kind of feel the same way that at least right now, well, I don't know. This article and them actually putting this out was all before the Ripple news, and so a lot of people kind of feel like the Ripple decision, they basically punted on some aspects that basically just say, "Hey, Congress, this is your job now." It's not, in fact, the SEC's job to decide how changes should be implemented with new technology. It's Congress's. It's the SEC's job just to enforce those kind of things. And the judge basically said, they were wrong to do so here. They might have been right to do so here. And Congress, it's time for you to step up and tell us what the right way of going about this is going forward. So maybe that is enough to kind of push lawmakers, to actually start trying to agree with each other. And, we shall see. We shall see.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah. I've got another one here that's just a little bit more detail about it, like with the actual breakdowns and stuff like that, and kind of it puts a lot more into the CFTC's jurisdiction, and it essentially basically says the vast majority of cryptos are not securities. They are, exactly, they're commodities.
Yeah, but it also has a lot more consumer protection focus than the previous version of this bill did.
And it changes the way taxation would happen, where miners right now need to recognize as a taxable event when they receive.
Oh, this is actually a really big deal.
Yeah, when like a block reward happens and they win, that is a taxable event, even if they're not selling yet.
Treating it right
That's the way
now.
it is now.
Yeah.
That's the assumption right now. With this law, it would change it to it's not a taxable event until they sell, which that would be a very big deal. Yeah, exactly.
That'd be amazing.
So very exciting.
So
anyway, I think that's pretty much all the. Oh well, there's one other. We didn't actually have the bot do it, but we do have one other piece of news because it literally just happened this morning.
To the moon, baby.
Exactly. So hopefully as crypto goes to the moon, it looks like India is going as well. They're going to be the fourth country to land on the moon. This isn't going to be a manned mission. It's going to take a month for them to get there. So
wow.
When I read that, I was like, oh my God, that sounds awful. But it's robots, so it's all good. They can take their time, don't have to go as fast. So yeah, it'll get there sometime in August if everything goes well. They will have been the fourth country to have landed on the moon at that point. And
But what, like the first
moon,
in our
baby.
lifetime?
No, I think Russia and China. I mean, China was really relatively recent. I don't remember when Russia first did it.
Okay.
But China just had a robot up there not too long ago. So that was definitely a during our lifetime kind of a thing.
Still very exciting.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's the news.
It's the Web3
All
Weekly
the news
Wrap-up.
that is fit to stream. Yeah. So we will see you next week. Yeah.
Sounds good. Yeah.
Let's watch the actual liftoff as we sign off.
All right. Have a good weekend, everyone.
4, 3, 2, 1, 0.
To the moon.
Plus 5 seconds. Lift off.
of normal P1
Here
tracking.
we have a majestic liftoff of LVM-3 M4 rocket carrying India's prestigious Chandrayaan.